What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another breakdown for American Horror Story Freak Show. I am not in a onesie again. I spilled coffee on myself this morning, so no, that's not happening.
Same here, Greg. I couldn't do the onesie. It's hard enough chasing this puppy around. No onesies this week, but we're still going to break down episode 12. It is called Showstoppers. Let's get into it.
All right, so the episode kicks off in the rain with Stanley driving up to the freak show just in time for a party, which is, again, right from the jump it looks like they're doing an homage to 1932's Freaks, and that's pretty much what this entire episode is. It's great.
Yeah, it's really good, and it sets the tone. As soon as you see Stanley show up right here and there's the rain and thunders outside, like you know it's not going to be good for him. There's a lot of fun references throughout this episode, like you mentioned, obviously 1932's Freaks, but also we get some more AHS connections as well too.
Yeah, we get a few things from the Asylum in this episode as well. We start with Elsa telling everyone they're going to watch a movie together, and Susie immediately tells her, I hope it's not the sign of the cross.
Not the sign of the cross again.
Awesome throwback, obviously, to Asylum. I believe it was Nor'easter. There is an actual storm outside, the thunder, the rain, all that kind of stuff. And That's when Sister Mary Eunice makes reference to that movie as well, that they're going to watch that, right?
That's one of my favorite scenes.
We're all going to be together in the dark, watching The Sign of the Cross, a movie full of fire, sex, and the death of Christians. What fun.
Literally, as soon as Susie says the words, you hear like thunder and lightning outside. It was just pitch perfect, like obviously a reference and a nod to a previous season of American Horror Story, so great to see. And then they get into the actual film that they want to watch, which is Freaks, the film that you mentioned earlier, and the film that heavily inspires not only this episode, but the entire season of Freak Show, right? They talk about the plot, and it's basically foreshadowing for what's about to happen to Stanley right now.
Amazon Eve even goes into detail on the plot for her Freaks with the main character, how they, betray the Freaks, they steal from them. The main character then gets a little too drunk, reveals everything, their whole plan, and alcoholism has been a major theme in this season as well, as we've seen with a few characters who say a little too much when they get drunk, which leads to this episode where finally it's the end for Stanley, and not only Stanley, Maggie. And of course, in that movie, the Freaks seek their revenge and they take it out on that character, as we find out later on this episode what happens to Maggie and Stanley. Maggie and Stanley are donezo.
You want to come over to my house and play video games?
Dunzo.
Hey, Tom, you want to come play putt-putt with me?
No, we're dunzo.
Then, Greg, Richard is given a gift. Remember, they think he's Richard, not Stanley yet. They have a gift for him, and Desiree picked out the perfect gift for him, someone's head. It's actually the director of the Morbidity Museum's head in a jar.
First, I thought, was that a little too far? Desiree just chops off her head. But then if you go back to the very beginning with Stanley and Maggie, they do make the deal and and promises him and saying I don't care where you get the bodies, but you can go ahead and bring them here. So I can see how this is justified. It's fine with me.
I'm with you on that. Yeah, it is. I mean, murder is it's a horrible thing, but I
don't recommend murder.
Yeah,
none of
us recommend murder. None of us
recommend
recommend murder, but this woman knowingly worked with these two individuals that were providing her specimens by any means, and she kind of was no questions asked. So you do deserve some form of justice if you were involved in this, but maybe not murder. Maybe just bring her to the authorities. Now, another thing is that the police these days, they didn't really help. They never came to their defense. Justice is a little bit different back then. So,
especially
Desiree,
on this show.
Yeah, exactly on this show as well. And Desiree, even she asked that whole small thing about where's security guards. As soon as she knew there was no security guards, hey, I'm just gonna kill you and we're gonna take your head. Pretty aggressive. The one question I have now, Greg, is now that she's out of the picture and her head's in a jar, is the Morbidity Museum still around? Are people still going to this thing? When will the end of the Morbidity Museum happen? Because that place sucks.
They're going to go back to this museum at some point or reference it somehow in the future, whether it burned down or whatever.
Haunted, Greg. It's haunted.
Oh, I like that.
You could literally connect every season into this one museum, or have, artifacts from every different season in this one museum.
The car keys from the SUV that Mallory used to run over the Antichrist All of it's there.
Yes, the wheel, the hubcaps, or the steering wheel from Mallory's Range Rover is in here.
Yeah.
How she murdered the Antichrist.
So Stanley immediately says, I'm innocent, didn't do a thing, it's not me. He's trying to make up any excuse he can to get out of this, whatever's about to happen to him in the next few moments. But right before the freaks can get to him, he tells them that Elsa was the one that killed Ethel.
And then, of course, Elsa has some knives on hand, and she throws one into his leg, injuring him. He's forced to run outside. And this was a really cool, fun sequence here, very horror, a lot of horror tropes here. But like, you know, you have the rain, the lightning, the thunder. And he's basically on this campground alone, and literally people are coming out of like different areas and corners of the freak show, and he's basically surrounded, and he's kind of like forced to go underneath one of the cabins or whatever, and they surround him, and what we think they murder him, and this is a direct callback, like we said again, to the movie Freaks. So it was pretty horrifying, but remember, this guy deserves what he has coming to him.
And then we check back in on Jimmy. It seems that Elsa's taking care of him, as well as Maggie. She's trying to now, here's a redemption. She's one last time to, make good with Jimmy, and he's not having it. Not only that, Jimmy finds out that Dell's dead. So every time everyone comes back to talk to Jimmy, he learns that someone else has died that he was really close to. So I don't know what he's doing at this point. And now I love his line where he screams to him, I have no hands.
We need you now.
I have no hands!
Jimmy, I think he's in a place of self-reflection at this point, right? Like, he's lost so many people close to him. He's literally at the bottom, like rock bottom, without hands, without anyone around him, his parents. But he's come to this realization that some of the people around him aren't who they said they were, obviously, including Maggie and even his dad. And he basically just has a change of heart in how he feels about Maggie as well, right? Like, because of what you did and the accomplice that you were to Stanley, like, these people died because of you. And, I basically, that one line stood out to me that was like, wow, that's super aggressive, dude. Like, he's like, once I get my hands, you better watch out. Like, you better get out of here. Like, promoting a little bit too much, too super violent in temper, but like,
He comes to the point that Ma Petite is dead and the blood's on your hands and it's unforgivable. So Maggie, run.
Yeah, Maggie needs a run. And it also makes you think that, like, maybe Jimmy's evolved now after kind of the way he used to deal with things was with alcohol, right? And, like, kind of go into a further despair and all that stuff. But now I think that he realizes that there's other means to kind of bring himself back up. And he still has a family at the freak show, right? A lot of people there that he cares about, that he loves. And I think that ultimately this is going to help him realize that, hey, I need to just step up and I need to take care of these people.
And right after that scene with Jimmy and Maggie, again, where Jimmy's telling Maggie, warning her one last time, you should leave, just run, get out of here. We see an establishing shot back at the freak show, which is just a bunch of chickens on the ground. And again, another major nod to Freaks and a big, big, big foreshadowing moment for a few characters.
I love that as well. And then after that, we get a really, really cool shot of Massimo's entrance into the big top, into the freak show. It's like he's like silhouetted against the entrance, and it's just really cool because how it's composed, but also the return of Danny Houston, one of our favorite actors in the American Horror Story whole series. He's coming back, and we already know his relationship with Elsa and what he provided for her. So good to have his entrance back into the group right now.
Meanwhile, the twins are having sex with Chester, and that doll, that Marjorie, those eyes, that shot, it's so damn creepy. Now, the twins do manage to get Chester to turn that doll away, or I think he knocks it to the floor.
He just throws it on the
at
ground,
least for the moment.
Yeah.
And of course, Marjorie, or I guess Chester, gets upset, and they have a little bit of an argument, which leads to Marjorie telling him it's time to get rid of those twins.
Yeah, I mean, Marjorie, she says, like, you just treated me like a pair of socks. You threw me on the ground. Had Chester just left her there and let her watch, I mean, maybe, it wouldn't have, turned into this whole thing. And she just wanted to sit there and watch them have sex. Nothing weird at all when the doll is just sitting there watching you guys have sex. But like that's a tangent.
Also, the doll's a doll, and Marjorie even lets him know that. Like, listen, dude, you killed your wife and her friend. It wasn't me, so you're going to jail for this.
You killed Alice and Lucy.
That's impossible. I'm a doll.
Now, meanwhile, in the rest of the group, you know, they paid close attention to what Stanley did say before he was attacked. Remember, he did mention that Elsa had a hand in Ethel's murder, and that he helped cover it up. So that's kind of like stuck in the back of their heads after they heard that. For a lot of these people, they've already had kind of like second thoughts about Elsa and how she's been treating them, right? So, you know, this was kind of the opportunity for them to kind of think like, hey, maybe she's not so good after all. And you know what? Actually, who was a better motherly figure to all of us and someone who kind of like fought for us and stood for us and treated us, you know, as equals was Ethel. I like how they're going back and they're kind of looking back at some memorabilia, some photos of Ethel when she was in, I like this little nod here, P.T. Barnum Circus, Barnum Bailey, the greatest show on earth, you know. And actually, the bearded lady was actually, you know, inspired by Annie Jones, the real life bearded lady who was in Barnum and kind of was a headliner back in the day. And she did everything. It's kind of a sad story. I looked this up, but Annie Jones like did everything she could to kind of to campaign against the use of the word freak and how it was kind of sold and how she was basically, you know, just exploited and used because she was born differently than other people. A nice nod to the real life inspiration here, but also it's a very, 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 very sad story.
Meanwhile, Dandy's laying his trap for the twins. He's trying to get them back. So he's playing the nice guy with the news that, oh, Chester, he's not the guy you think he is. So he leaves them his dossier on everything about Chester apparently he got from his PI, which of course is going to tell him that he murdered his wife and her friend, and who knows what else is in that thing. Now, the twins aren't buying it at first, at least, and they kick him out. But he's good. He's like, hey, I'm just going to leave you this, and we'll call it a day, because I have bigger plans in store for everyone at this freak show. So we'll see where this goes in the future. But for now, it seems the twins have that doubt in their head about Chester.
And for good reason, right? They should have doubt, because they know the person that Dandy is, and they've seen it firsthand. They've lived with the guy.
Yeah.
They've been there. So... but like it can't stop them from actually wanting to look further into the truth or into the facts that he's provided. You know, how do they even know what he's given them is actually the real deal? But ultimately, this leads to them turning against Chester because it's just all too much evidence stacks up against him and what he's done in his past.
Now, from there, we go back to Jimmy and Massimo, and we learn the backstory for Massimo and how he ended up saving Elsa's life, and then also hunting down the Nazis that cut off her legs in the first place. And this is where we get another asylum nod, where we find out the doctor that worked on Elsa's legs was none other than Dr. Hans Gruber, played, of course, by the great James Cromwell, and his son is playing the character this season, John Cromwell. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's a cool, awesome crossover. Obviously, he becomes known as Arthur Arden in Asylum, and then to have both the Cromwells, father and son, play the same character in flashbacks, you know, an evil character throughout one of the AHS franchise, one of the most evil, if not up there. I think top 5 probably what he's done to people.
Pretty bad.
Yeah, he's pretty bad.
He's up there.
Yeah, so it's a cool connection though to see how Massimo is a part of Elsa's story, how they're so connected, and then how he's kind of sharing this with Jimmy just to show the pain that he went through and how you know, that he was without hope for a long time as well. Someone that Jimmy can relate to in that sense. So this is the perfect conversation for Jimmy to have at this moment, and know that there is hope at the end of this whole thing he's going through.
Now we head back to the big top, where Chester is now performing his act with the rest of the crew there. It starts off with him trying to get the twins to jump into the golden box so he can cut them in half. They say no. And sadly, Maggie jumps up to the front and says, I'll do it.
Get in the box, Lucy.
My name's Maggie.
Middle of this performance, this practice round that he gets into, he starts hallucinating, of course, which he's done in the past. And it's a cool use of the previous actors that we've seen throughout, his wife and friend, and obviously Marjorie jumps in there as well, and just a gruesome way to saw somebody in half, and then when he opens up the box, and then you see half of her body on each side, and just all of her internal organs. This was pretty disgusting. Even the sound effects, Greg, are pretty nasty.
It is so gnarly. Emma, every season, she's like, all right, if I'm going, you gotta go. I gotta go out in a blaze of glory every season. I love her. Bring her back for more. I can't believe she's not in season 10. They gotta have a little role for her. Anything, please.
Now, Greg, this is followed up by perhaps the best line of the episode, if not the season, when
the line of the season.
Yes, line of the season, when Desiree says this.
She had it coming.
What do we do now?
Steal her jewelry and bury the bitch.
No, he's had enough. He's fed up. He's done with Marjorie, at least. Marjorie.
You don't think.
Yeah. So he has a little bit of a fit, and they get into an argument again, and he stabs Marjorie over and over and over again. Now, to wrap up Chester's story, he goes to the police department with a wrapped up body. He takes it. They open it up, and it's nothing but the dummy itself stabbed a million times. But he gives a great line here.
Send me to the chair.
Now, meanwhile, the twins rush over to Elsa. They notice that she has also, 2 prosthetic legs, but that's the least of their concerns at the moment, is they're trying to get her the hell out of there because they know that Desiree and the group are coming to get her. So they tell her straight up that, hey, you saved us. You gave us a shot, so we're trying to give you one last chance here.
Yeah, and then we see that Elsa is obviously met with Dandy. His plan is all coming into place. We find out that she sold him the freak show for a mere $10,000, Greg. Now, I understand back in that time, this is a lot of money.
Ma Petite, all this stuff, and Dandy was throwing around $1 million. So she could have went higher here. This is insane.
For something tells me that Elsa is not the great negotiator. Now, we know that obviously she did get Ma Petite for 3 cases of Dr. Pepper. Great deal.
Cool,
but then
cool, good.
Ma Petite body was sold to the museum for like $3,000, I believe. So to only get $10,000 for the freak show and what's left of it, that seems like a really bad deal. Dandy got the better end of this, I think.
I get it. She was desperate at the time. The freaks are coming after her, but still, come on, not 10 grand. The dude, he sneezes 10 grand. Come on. So Dandy walks back to the show with all the paperwork. He's got it. He's now in charge of the show, and he even gets, who was at the time, Paul, to go rush and go get him some lemonade. Good Lord, they're in trouble.
Fetch me a lemonade with a paper straw.
Something tells me that they're not going to cooperate with him in the final episode, but I think it was very fitting too that Dandy kind of walked through the big top and then he went up to the stage by himself, right? He's all alone in this world. Everyone kind of sees him for who he is, and he goes on the top of the stage and he kind of takes a bow. But then, Greg, he hears some sounds coming from the side.
And of course, this is another direct callback to the 1932 Freaks film, where at the end, the main character was turned into a chicken kind of thing. They cut off his arms and legs. They actually put Stanley in Meep's outfit. And I think they sewed his mouth shut or something too. It's so gnarly. I love it.
It is really gnarly, and I have some questions about this, Greg. How in the hell did the freak show and the people there pull this off in terms of not killing him completely? I mean, is there a medic on staff that I've missed? I don't get it.
Massimo's there. He's in town, so they had his help.
Good point.
I'll just go with that. Let's just say Massimo helped him out.
Good point.
Speaking of Massimo, at the very end, he presents Jimmy with his new hands, and it's a nice little touch. I love when they raise him up to the cameras. It's not 5 fingers, it is his claws again.
Yeah, this is perfect. Good fitting, and to how to Jimmy, his arc here, and as we saw earlier in the episode, there was a diagram or a plan of what his hands would look like, normal hands. And they even have a conversation with, I believe it's Amazon Eve, that says, oh, you're going to have normal hands. But, I guess Jimmy comes to the realization that this is his normal and he's fine with it. And he's content with the person he is and how he was born and the family that he has now. So it's a good fitting end to not wanting to change who he is and kind of just, this is what's made him to the person that he is today. say.
And that's a great shot to leave it on for the season finale for this season. We're left with, okay, what's Jimmy gonna do here? What are the freaks gonna do? What's Dandy's final act here?
Yeah, Greg, it seems like they have a whole bunch to pack into one last episode before this season is over. But of course, we will be breaking it down next week on the channel, so make sure you come back. And guys, hit us up in the comments with any comments, concerns, questions that you have about this season or future seasons. We'd love to hear from you guys and hope you guys are staying safe at home. Obviously, we will see you guys next week, and let us know what onesies you're wearing.